On this episode of Collect Your Thoughts, it's our very first episode, and we are talking all things connection. So sit back, get comfy, and let's get started. And welcome to the very first episode of Collect Your Thoughts. I am Sean Millhouse.
And I'm Jason LeCompte.
And this is really exciting. How are you doing today,
Totally
Jason?
exciting. I'm good. Actually, yeah. I got like a good night's sleep and some ties. And yeah, I feel grounded and ready to do this.
I'm feeling good. It's the good kind of anxious, the kind of like, this matters to me. And I'm, ready to dive in, and also challenging any of those little perfectionism gremlins. And I'm not going to let those bastards win. So let's get down to brass tacks in terms of maybe breaking down a little bit about ourselves, a little bit about our business that really inspired the title of this podcast. And then also, why are we doing this podcast in the first place?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So since I'm already yapping, I guess I'll go first. So again, my name's Sean Millhouse. I am originally from Kansas City, Kansas. I have lived in Northwest Arkansas since 2009, which sounds...
That's a long time.
It's insane because it feels like it was just yesterday. And of course, in my head, I'm like, 2009 was just, 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, I've only been here. I'm just a little baby.
Your residency officially has its driver's license.
Yes. And so it's very strange. I moved down here because I had just graduated from graduate school. And for those of us who were very much adults at that time, that was right in the midst of the recession. And I wanted deeply to just find a job. That was my main goal. It's like, I do not want to graduate from graduate school without a job. And so luckily, my best friend, shout out to Lori, she was one of the managers for a clinic down here for Community Mental Health Center, and basically recruited me. And then I was there for 12 years and some change. And then in 2021, I was basically welcomed to Bentonville Counseling Collective, and I've been there ever since. And it's been a ride, and it's definitely been one of the best things I've ever done. So thank you, Jason.
That's nice to hear.
Yeah, of course. I know that'd be really sad. And actually today I want to talk about how you ruined my life. So with that being said, I think that'd be a perfect segue, Jason, to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I mean, I'm originally from Chicago. I moved to Bentonville, Arkansas in 2015 with my husband. I always had the intention of like starting my own practice, but needed to get licensed here in Arkansas. So I worked through one of the hospitals here. I worked as a licensed associate counselor for a couple of years with another practitioner, and during that time kind of set up my own practice. And when I did that, I told my husband, like, I want this to be like where I was trained in Chicago. It was an LGBTQ focused practice in Chicago. It was a group practice. They were very education focused, very supportive. And I loved the environment. Live Oak is what they are called, Live Oak, Chicago. They're thriving now, and they're actually in more cities than just Chicago, which is incredible. Wow. Yeah. So moving here, I was like, yep, I want to do that. But I didn't want to follow their business model. I really was interested in working more collaboratively, and not from sort of anybody who knows anything about the therapy world knows there's business models that can be can really take a lot from the practitioner in terms of financial resources, right? So I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that. And so something more along the lines of a collective felt important to me. So I got together with a couple of other people, this is 7 or 8 years ago. I can never remember the year.
I think when we talked, it was
But I think
2017, 2018 is
yeah, somewhere in
roughly.
there. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
been almost 8 years, I think, since we really started this. And I mean, now we've grown to 6 people, which is incredible. And we just moved into a fantastic new space.
Yes.
And I mean, just the potential is there, right? It's really invigorating. So yeah,
It really is.
that's kind of my background in history.
Yeah. And it's just really cool, especially, Jason, you just mentioned that we did move to our new location. And I definitely think that's, part of that move definitely inspired wanting to really lean into creating this podcast. And because I think, change, I think kind of inspires all of us. Like when you see one thing happen, I at least for me, it's like a ripple effect. I can just, I get inspired and think like, is there something that I'm sitting still in that I'm not doing that maybe would be like beneficial for me or be exciting, a new challenge? And so, I think, moving to the building has definitely been that, but then also is like, okay, maybe I'm going to finally talk about doing this podcast and actually see it through, which is really scary to do.
And really fun. I'm really excited for this.
That could be a good time to talk about why are we doing this. So I'll just give a little bit of background. First of all, when I've always wanted to do some kind of podcast, but I think like a lot of people, especially now, the market is so saturated with so many different podcasts for pretty much everything. And so I think there was this part of me that's like, I'm not famous. I'm not like that interesting. I'm just some guy in Northwest Arkansas. Like, what's that going to matter? And there is still a little part of me that feels that way. However, I'm trying to challenge that by, I think, leaning into, well, partly, I think the strength of our practice is that we really try to empower each other when we hear about things that we're interested in and goals and whatnot. And at one of it wasn't that far into when I had joined the practice, we have these, we had these at that time weekly meetings, and somebody had mentioned a podcast, and then I said something like, oh man, would that be really cool if one day we had a podcast? And so our name is Bentonville Counseling Collective. And I was like, what would be a good name for our podcast that kind of brings that into, the name of what we go with? And I was like, oh my gosh, collect your thoughts. I don't know if you remember that meeting, but like I just remember being really excited. I was like, that could be a really cool name. I just
I
like the
remember
idea. Do you?
Well, I remember you being the person who came up with that idea for the podcast and the
Yes.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, well, think yes, and yeah, and I was like, God, that'd be so cool to do this all together. And then like, it was like at the beginning of every year, I would definitely be like, okay, I think this is the year. I think we want to do this. And then, for many various reasons, there were many starts and stops. And now has felt like the time, not only for me personally and wanting to push myself, but most importantly, I think because of the world that we're living in right now. I don't know about you, Jason, but pretty much with all my clients right now, I'm somebody that's not very political, but I can't avoid it. It's just a part of my life, and I can't escape the headlines and the terrible things that are happening, and I just don't know what to do. And it is really scary. So, following the result of the 2024 election, I really by the end of that week, I'd gone through all the different, we all did. I think we all were in a collective, those of us who did not feel good about the results of the election, I think felt this very big, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? This is scary. How is this happening? All the feelings. And I guess like by that Friday after the election, I remember feeling like, no, we've got to find a way to find community in this. There's got to be a way that
Yeah.
I don't know, just make ourselves even more known so that those who exist in our community really know it, and then B, like we can try to empower each other and also like spotlight one another. And
Yeah.
so I think that's hopefully what part of this is about. It's like we get to extend that spotlight and also recognizing the limits of our privilege and our expertise, but also to share what we do know. And I definitely think, we come from a really interesting place in the sense of Northwest Arkansas is this sort of smorgasbord of so many things. And so while Northwest Arkansas definitely has many progressive elements, there's still a lot of traditional, Christian values,
I'm
things
more
that are.
conservative. They're more conservative values. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's important to shed light on the people here that bring out all the different various kind of colors of the rainbow, so to speak. But Jason, I'm curious about what has made you decide to join me on this journey, and just, yeah, your thoughts on jumping into this podcast.
Sure. I think something that maybe you glossed over was the length of experience that you have in this industry and how many clients that you've worked with, right? So you have this perspective that you're bringing to the table. And I think that's, for me, like a really big draw to be able to talk with somebody that I know so well and feel really close to, but also like you have this extended perspective of living and working in this area and in this industry. And so when we're talking about really important things like connection and community, I know you've got some wise nuggets in there, right? I know you've got, I mean, I'm
I
serious.
definitely have
Like
some chicken nuggets.
maybe chicken nuggets, but also a little bit of wisdom, right? Just about like the different ways that we talk about this with our clients, the different ways that we experience this as people, but as professionals too. And so something like this is super important. And then also for me, like education has always been really, really important. It's kind of one of my core values. So it's being able to offer some perspective, some insight, maybe a little bit of helpful information to a larger audience than just the 25 people that I see a week. I was, that's also really attractive to me. So it feels really important. So yeah, that's why I'm here.
Thank you for joining the ride and the
Yeah,
insanity.
yeah,
And
yeah,
hopefully, we have some really awesome conversations. And I think too, like, that's my hope in this, is that this podcast can be a mixture of learning something, sharing things, really, I think, I don't know, being able to sit back and listen to thoughtful conversations, and from the perspective of therapists that live in an area where there is kind of this push and pull, which I think makes us unique. It's one thing to live in a generally more progressive area and to identify as queer in that area, and then there is to do that here in
mm,
Northwest Arkansas, which I will say, I think a lot of people are generally very friendly and are very kind, but there's also I think always that fear of, am I going to be accepted? Am I going to belong? And I think we want to definitely promote that side of this, is
yeah,
how can we belong to each other? How can we belong to ourselves? And what
yeah.
does that look like?
Especially those of us with minority identities, like you mentioned. Yeah,
Hopefully you learn something. Hopefully you enjoy what you hear. And also, hopefully you laugh. Hopefully, as a listener, I know there are so many podcasts out there. And hopefully we are going to become worthy of your time, and everything that comes with our knowledge, and hopefully what we learn from the different things that we research, talk about, and the people we talk to. I guess this would be a great place to jump into what our first topic is for our first
sure.
episode,
Yeah.
which
So
is
connection. Yeah,
connection. That's
yeah, yeah.
right. um well, I want to hear from you when you think about connection, just off the top of your head. Like, what are some of the things that just like hit you in your brain? Like, this is what it means to me.
I mean, like the HDMI cables that I use to connect my Switch to my TV. No, I know that's not what you're talking about. For me, connection is, I mean, also one of my core values, right? It's weird that these are kind of coming up, and I'll bet you there's a future podcast where we talk about values work, but um,
Yes.
connection and community, like I look for this kind of by default, like at a deeper level, right? We can connect with
Mhm.
our neighbor by waving hi. We can hang out with a friend and connect. But when we have more deep, more meaningful conversations, that's the kind of connection that I think I'm talking about, and that really nurtures me in my soul.
Yeah.
So that's really like top of mind. Like that's what this topic means.
I think what I love about connection is that even though there are, I think, generally some universal thoughts as
Mm.
to what is considered connection, I think it can also just live and exist in so many different places in terms of where it can go. And definitely why this to me was a very important first topic is this is not breaking news. As a country, I think we have never been more disconnected from each other, despite having the most ways to be connected to each other. And
Yeah.
that is for so many reasons. And it's scary, and it makes me sad to know that, like, I think really good intentions have been sort of ran over by lots of different forces of, well, not good, and they have kind of tarnished that, and so people are afraid to connect and are afraid, I think, to step out, but then also to really like zoom in the idea of connecting to ourselves. I think that's kind of to me, like, that's where it starts, is
Mm.
if you can't connect internally with understanding who you are, why you think how you think, why you feel what you feel, and why certain things bring out certain responses from ourselves, then we're not going to be able to really mishmash with each other
Sure.
successfully or
Yeah.
as thoroughly, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think knowing who you are, knowing what's important to you, spending time getting to know yourself and spending time nurturing yourself in that space so that you are emotionally and physically healthy. That to me is where connection with self starts, right? And I
Right.
see I mean, I'm sure you do too, right? All kinds of variations in this from in my client populations, especially generationally, right? You and I are only, I think, about 8 years apart. I think I identify a little bit more with the Gen X, and you're definitely smack dab in the middle of the millennials.
I'm an
Um,
elder millennial, thank you.
you're an yes, elder millennial, yes. But I think like the way people do this, sort of the if you want to say the language they speak about connection, right? People from my generation, a little bit older, I think were definitely more analog focused. Like that's the experience that we had growing up. And I didn't have a whole lot of online connections, right? Until it was really my late teens or early 20s. And so I think I always still by default, I look for that, right? I look for IRL experiences, if you want to
Yeah.
borrow something from the kids, right? But also like my teens and 20 somethings, right? They a lot of them live almost exclusively online. And
Yeah.
so we talk about the differences. Like, do you really feel seen? Do you really feel heard, right? What can you interpret in body language and gestures and tone of voice and posture and personal tempo in person versus if you're just having a voice chat on Discord or something, right? Like those connections feel and look, and I think we experience them and get out of them things. They're very different, right?
Right.
So it's like I said, it's a common theme. It's something people are hungry for. It's essential, I think, connection. I'm not even going to say I think. I freaking know it is
Yeah.
to our thriving, right? Our existence, our survival, but also feeling like we're not just surviving, but that we're thriving. That we actually have people around us who care about us, support us, show up for us, right? And that know us at the deeper level. That's really what I think we're all really hungry for.
Yes, yes. And that's what real connection does, right? Is it does bring out the best in us.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the best people in your life are the ones that enhance your best and brightest colors
Mm-hmm.
and also love you even through the lesser or less enjoyable parts of being a human. And
They
so,
show up
like,
for you in the tough times, right? As well as the good
right,
times, right? It's not
right.
just all
Not
sunshine
fair
and
weather.
rainbows, right? You got to sometimes walk me through the mud when I'm in the mud. one of our favorite gurus, right? We're kind of talking around some of these words, but Brene
Yeah.
Brown, like we both just love Brene. Shout out Brene. Hey, girl.
Woo, Brene, woo,
We're
woo.
going to be besties someday. She doesn't know that yet, but one of
Yeah,
my
we've been
favorite,
best friends for several years at this
and
point.
she just doesn't know it.
I know. Sorry, Brene. Just know you're mentioned a lot in the best of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
I mean, I'll just be transparent. I buy one of her books and gift them to clients who I
Yes.
think would benefit from them just because I value her work so much. So anyway, one of
Yes.
my favorite quotes from her is, it says about connection. She says, "It's the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and," we didn't mention this yet, "but valued," right? I
Boom.
really value you. And that means that I'm going to show up when you're going through it. And I'm going to show up when our favorite show is on and we want to share that time together or
Yeah.
whatever. Right. Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
with connection, it is a thorough line in her work because it is essential to pretty much everything. What we've talked about, we both really love words, and I definitely love kind of the etymology of words. And so, connection, it comes from first from Old French. I'm going to butcher this. Connexion, Connexion, from the Latin connexionem, which is a binding or joining together, or to fasten together, to tie, join together. I think that that's such a big piece of like remembering that connection is about togetherness,
Yeah.
and not forgetting that we have to like fasten ourselves to each other in a way, or we don't reach that like depth of connection. And there are
Right.
certainly like levels of that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that depth really takes, and again, right, this isn't all about Brene, but she would say that some of those require vulnerability, right? If we're really looking for that deeper connection, like that's really what's required, is that we're able to share not just, what I had for dinner last night, but
Right.
maybe how I feel about something that's going on in the world, right? Or how you made me feel in a particular situation, right? That's me being a little bit vulnerable, but also it's providing an opportunity for us to really connect and deepen the relationship, right?
Right.
Because these things are important. So, yeah.
And vulnerability, I think I mean, that has come a long way, that word, again, because of Renee. God, I mean, we could have a drinking game of how many times we've brought her up.
I could quote her all day. Like, yeah,
It's
she's
true,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, the first assignment of Collect Your Thoughts is just to go to a Brene, go to the library and get all the books. But I think like the whole idea with vulnerabilities, I think we used to look at that as weakness, and still sometimes we can like define it as weakness. And now instead, I think it is really about saying like this innermost part of yourself that is going to be something really hard to share, but when you do it with the right people, it's completely worth it. It's like
Yeah.
literally jumping off a cliff, and then like the net catches you when it goes
Yeah.
right.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's scary and also really satisfying when it actually happens. So
Yeah.
requires
Yeah.
some effort sometimes, right?
Right.
Something else I
So,
thought, like, since
yeah.
you kind of brought it up, was like connection within the LGBTQ community, right? And this isn't just a gay podcast, right? But we both identify as gay men, and we work a lot with
Excuse me.
queer folks. This is Sean's coming out party, yay!
Oh no, I'm so vulnerable.
But it can look and feel a little different, I think, in our community, right? Because of the layers of historical oppression. And like you mentioned, like we live in an area that has a history of more conservative values, and we have a lot of internalized homophobia from all of the different messages that we get, right? So just keeping in mind that like connection's going to look different for different people, kind of depending on, and maybe that's obvious, but I think it's also important. Like connection looks different in Latino families, right? Connection looks different in the African American community. Connection looks different in the gay and queer community, right? We have different obstacles to overcome, and we don't always have the training or the experience or the education to really know how to connect with people, right? So I I just feel like that's a worthy call out. There's a lot of disconnection for lots of different reasons, and
Right.
sometimes it can be community centric. So just keeping that in mind. I don't know. That's something that I see a lot, and that I've contended with personally in my own personal life. Right,
Absolutely.
experiences of disconnection and reconnection, and found family, right, chosen family, like kind of recreating that for myself and making sure that I have a community around me because of some of the disconnection that I've experienced. So yeah.
And I think too, what the extension of that is, even within marginalized communities, there are sort of outskirts in within those marginalized communities that maybe struggle to feel accepted, to feel like they belong, to feel like they can connect
Mm.
with maybe the stereotype of a given community, which can create a lot of division, whether it's meant to or not, because I think there is sometimes this gatekeeping that can happen
Mm.
inside of communities, whether they realize they're doing it or not. To me, that plays into how can we start with the self. How do we start with really getting real with ourselves so that we can be sort of a good steward of good connection? Like, Jason, what do you think are some of the ways that we can achieve that?
I love that. I talk about this a lot. Whether or not it's wholly appropriate to do, I use myself as I don't know, just sort of like an example a lot of times,
Yeah.
like places where I think I do things well, and then places also where I don't do things right. But when I show up like that for my clients, I feel like it just makes that example that much more real, right? They've got a
Yeah.
person sitting in front of them who has tried these things, right? So the way that I kind of conceptualize it is like a mind, body, spirit kind of a thing, right? So how do I get my mind clear and sort of reset and know what my intentions are for the day or for the week, right?
Right.
How do I take care of and nourish my body, right? Am I eating good foods? Am I drinking? Am I sleeping well? Am I moving my body so that I feel my best? All those kinds of things, right? And then spirit for me, I mean, spirit, you can nurture your spirit in 1,000 different ways, and it's going to mean something different to everybody, right? But for
Right.
me, creativity is really where I connect with my spirit, right? So I stay connected to the theater community in Northwest Arkansas. I stay connected to projects like this,
Hmm.
where I know I'm going to get some sort of creative fulfillment, right? And then even like, randomly will journal or randomly will color, or it doesn't really matter, right? But wherever I feel like I can kind of shut off my analytical brain and
Yes.
just deep dive into that other energy, that to me is really sort of spiritually nurturing. So those are
Absolutely.
kind of the guidelines that I follow for myself.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's funny when you mentioned journaling, because I don't know about you, Jason, but with half of our clients, at least half of my clients, one half is like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm definitely open to that, or I have done that. And then I feel like the other half are like, you're not gonna tell me to
I
journal, are
roll
you?
journaling. No, I get it. I
Because
actually
they're
say, I
like,
know this is a therapist cliche, but
right.
also writing down your feelings can
Yes.
help.
Yes. And
It
really
totally
breaking that
does. It
down.
totally
Yes.
does. Yeah.
Well, and bringing down to that, it doesn't have to just be like, "Dear journal, I had this
Hmm.
feeling today and I'm very sad." Like, it can be literally run on sentences. It can be
Yeah.
poetry. It can be lyric. You could like write down all the lyrics that are touching you right now in
Yeah.
your soul. There's no wrong way to do it. Or, whether it is channeling it through like music or podcasts or book club or whatever, just by like the what we consume as people, I
Mhm.
think helps us connect more and more with ourselves. But
Yeah.
if we're not thoughtful about that, then we sometimes lose the plot and we forget, and it's so
I like that
easy.
phrase, lose the plot. Yeah.
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 And so I definitely think for me, like, it feels like this, it's like I'm at home with myself. Like,
Mm.
it really, that to me is always a feeling I'm searching for. And I definitely, again, this is going to age me, but I don't care. I love, one of my favorite movies of all time is 2004's Garden State. And so much of that movie talks about looking for home, especially as like you're getting older. And I think, you really do learn that like the people you love are your home. And also,
Yeah.
like, to me, that then starts with dun dun dun, loving yourself.
Ah.
Which is like, it is the most, to me,
Yeah.
important relationship of your life,
Yeah.
is the one you have with yourself. As like crazy and self-centered as some people might want to call that, that it is. We have to live with ourselves every day. And so if you don't like yourself, if you're not sitting with yourself in a good way, if you're like against yourself, then I mean, it makes a lot of sense why you feel disconnected from yourself.
But here's the thing: loving yourself, like I feel like what you're alluding to is it's not arrogance, it's not
No,
hubris, right? It's not
that's not love.
overindulging in things, right? Like it really is about setting boundaries, right?
Right.
It's about having discipline around some of the things that are important to you, or that work for you, right? It's saying no when you need to say no, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
I guess is a form of boundary, but that to me is part of that, right? So I just don't want anybody listening or watching to go, well, I love
Yes.
myself and I'm the most important like that's not what that's about, right?
No,
It's
no,
really
no,
about
no.
caring for yourself. Like when you think about caring for another human being, how do you turn that right back around and towards yourself and care for yourself in all the ways that you need to be cared for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you really connect with yourself, that also means making connections with and about things that might be really hard for you to absorb and to digest. The truths about yourself, things that, essentially, I guess I live from a place of you never stop learning about yourself unless you
Mm,
decide to stop learning about yourself.
mm,
And so there will still be things that, when I, in my own therapy work with my therapist versus also my work with clients versus what I try to like read and learn and listen to in my own time, is being open to the fact that there might be blockades that keep us from connecting to ourselves. And it's not until I think we maybe feel that resistance, that like push of like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to face that. But usually on the other side of that is the thing that's going to help you connect better with yourself. But it's
yeah.
trusting that you're not going to like fall apart, or that's not going to like completely just, just incinerate your like self in the process.
I mean, you're talking about doing good therapeutic work, right? Like what's right on the other
Yes.
side of that discomfort or that fear is actually the thing that you're looking for. Like that's the theme
Yes.
in so much of the work that we do.
Right.
So you're right, but it does. It can sometimes feel like the end of the world's on the other side of that. And most
Absolutely.
of the time it's not.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
goodness. Yes. I'm going to say,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and if it does feel like that, then, hopefully you're seeing a therapist and you can want to work that out.
Hopefully. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Or at least you
Yeah.
have a trusted friend that you can talk to, you can bounce things off of, right?
Yeah.
I know not everyone has access to therapy. So that's,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And that's also, I think, a part of what we hope to do here is to bring parts of what we do with our clients each and every day, and to, hopefully drop some gems that everyone can enjoy and utilize in their
Yeah.
everyday life.
Yeah. Hey there, podcast friends. This episode is brought to you by the Bentonville Counseling Collective, where growth, healing, and connection are more than just buzzwords. They're how we do life. Whether you're navigating big changes, working through past trauma, supporting your child through play therapy, or looking for LGBTQ plus affirming care, the Bentonville Counseling Collective offers a welcoming space to do the work with therapists who genuinely get it.
And if you're local to Northwest Arkansas, come meet us in person at our Community Wellness Fair and Open House, Friday, June 20th from 2 to 6 p.m. We'll have games, prizes, snacks, art, and a variety of local organizations you can learn from and connect with. It's free, it's fun, and it's for everyone. Learn more at BentonvilleCounseling.com or follow us on Instagram at Bentonville Counseling. Now, back to our episode. Okay, were you going to say something?
I was just going to come up like some ways to connect. Like I know we're talking about it, right? And some of the things that we do with ourselves and like, but just having some concrete things to walk away with, I thought might be useful. What do you think?
Yeah, let's
Sure.
go jump right in. Let's do it.
So for me, I guess you can call it like a deeper listening, right? Like I can
Mm,
call across the house to my husband about what's for dinner, right? Or can you let the dogs out or whatever, that kind of a thing, right? But sitting down and looking at each other and having a conversation where we're really trying to understand, actually hearing that person, that
yeah.
to me is a really important part of that deeper, more meaningful connection, right? Seeking to
Mm.
understand. That to me is it's essential to really connecting.
We talk about this all the time, and I'm gonna set you up, and you better hit it out the park. What do you need in order to seek to understand someone, Jason?
Um, Curiosity.
Oh, he got it. It's out there.
It's my favorite thing to
Yes.
talk about. Of course, I'm going to hit that one out of the park.
Fuck
Like
yeah.
that's the core of my work, right?
Yeah.
Something that people don't really know about therapists is like we don't know everything. I'm a
No,
human, right? I might have read 100 books on the subject. That still doesn't mean that I know everything about how it applies to you.
exactly.
So I'm constantly seeking to understand. I'm constantly asking questions because your experiences, those are yours, right? So I'm going to use that curiosity to really listen to you on a deeper level and really try and understand you on a deeper level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first start is I think when you're looking at anyone is trying to find the things that make you curious about them.
Mm,
And in general, what you're curious about in just human beings.
mm,
I think, I'm always interested to know like, how a person, I think the hows are important, right? Like how did a person end up where they're at? How did they choose the career? How did they choose the relationships, their style, the whatever, like, and that
yeah.
definitely starts with curiosity for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Part of that connection, that deeper listening that I like to have with my people is spent in like the time that I spend with them.
Hmm.
Really, really having quality time with somebody, I feel like is also essential to that deeper connection, right? I have plans
Yeah.
this week to go visit a friend of mine who she just had a baby, and we haven't really caught up a ton because she just had a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've met the baby, I've come over, like we've caught up a little bit, but like I just want to sit down with her and like talk about the important things in our lives and how she's feeling and how she's coping and all that kind of stuff. So I have plans to spend some quality time with her, which I'm actually really excited about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
um Part of connection can also be about really checking ourselves to making sure that we're in the right headspace for connection,
Sure. Yeah.
and that and if we're not, what do we need to do to make sure that we are able to either shift to that place, or if we need to pull back, figuring out what
Mm.
that looks like.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we don't want to just show up just because we can. You really want to show up because you want to,
Right.
and because you're ready, you're present for it, you're in it.
Yeah.
um
With
yeah,
intention, right?
with
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about like
Yeah.
doing something on a regular basis? Like, do you, with the people you connect with, and I'm
Hmm.
thinking a little bit about like maybe our lunches that we have sometimes at
Yeah.
work, right? Do you have any like, I mean, besides that, but like rituals, regular things that you kind of do to seek out that connection?
Yeah. So on the most basic level, this is very millennial of me, is honestly memes, sending memes back and forth is like
Yes,
the
he does. For
laziest.
everybody who's listening and watching, he sends tons of memes, but I love it.
Hey,
It's great. Yeah,
but am I also very selective about what I
you
send?
are
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And
Thank you.
there's even a term for that. What is that term?
Oh
Millennial
God. Oh my
pebbling.
God. Oh,
You know that term.
I mean, I've heard that term, but I
Yeah,
guess
sure.
I always think about like little penguins, like, pebbles. Um, but yeah, and so I mean, like I think that's why we think we can do also about sometimes it can be where we've talked a lot about the deep, deep, deep ways to connect,
Mm.
but like a lot of times it can start with just that moment of like, oh, I remember when they made that joke about that like weird texture that drives them crazy, and then you'll happen to see some meme that like talks kind of in parallel to that, and you
Thank
send
you,
it.
algorithms.
Right, yeah. They're always listening.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so, yeah, so like for me, it can start with that, but then also, that's also about like the paying attention, the mindfulness, the intention part is,
Yeah.
I think, seeing people and, of course, we're in this field for various reasons. And so part of that is, I mean, we typically can feel energy and the shift, and also we can read
Mm.
certain things just based off of body language and facial expressions and the way they carry themselves, blah blah blah. And so I think like those things too, if you're engaged in that and you're curious about what you know more,
Mm.
there is a way, I think, then to kind of play into that energy in a way that shows I'm interested in what you're going through, good or bad or in the middle,
Yeah.
and I want to sit with you in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
There was something else that kind of came to mind while you were talking. I actually just went to a show last night. A guy that I did another show with last year. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like his last college show or whatever. So we just kind of went out to see it and show some support. But I guess it's a ritual of sorts, but it's the creativity, the creation of like a project like that.
Mm,
I feel like connection comes out of that like really strongly. Anybody who's ever been in a play or a musical will tell you that
absolutely.
the bonds that you make in those environments, in those shows, right, while you're doing that, like those people can sometimes feel like your best and closest friends, right? Because
Yeah.
you're showing up and you're creating these characters and you're creating this project, and it's vulnerable work, right? And so it
So
creates
vulnerable.
this opportunity for everyone to feel a lot closer, right? You're doing a scene with somebody and you're emoting at them. And even if it's as a character, you're still bringing some real human emotion to that scenario, right? So
Right.
I think creative projects, creative outlets, even just sitting in silence and coloring with somebody can feel connective, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes it's just about like not overthinking the process, but spending quality time doing
Yeah.
something. And creativity is a great way to do that, right? It's a great sort of pretense, if you will.
In terms of community
Mm,
and connecting more in community, I think it's important to all of us, whether we realize it or not. But I
mm,
definitely think it's something you are very outwardly passionate about and
mm.
really want to like focus more on. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah. I feel like you're almost bringing our conversation kind of full circle with this, right? Like that was something that I noticed when I left Chicago and moved here 10 years ago. um, Community was something that I was really seeking out. It was really something that
Hmm.
I left my community and I moved to a brand new place where I didn't have any community, right?
Yeah.
And we're in this really sort of strange microcosm. The people who live here call it the bubble, right? We're living in sort of like this strange mix of transplants and people from other, cities and countries, and
Yeah.
we have a huge mixture of, like you mentioned, sort of subcultures here. And so I think on some level there's something for everyone, but then on another level it hasn't really felt like it's all gelled. And
Yeah.
so I think in my search for community, I've really taken notice of that, but then I've also really tried hard to like pull people and entities and things in, right, and start to like
Hmm.
gel it for myself so that I felt more at home. And that's part of like what getting back into the theater community was about. It's part of what the collective has been about. It's part of the quality time that I spend with my found family. It's all of those things, right? I've really had to like put in the intentional effort to create community for myself here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it's really hard too, especially, depending on where you're at in your life or the kind of person you are just naturally. I think there are many people that can, especially I will say I'm one of those people that if I'm not really familiar with a situation, I definitely take more of a
Mm.
observer role. I definitely am more, like looking for the things and seeing how I feel based off of those observations. And so that can make it really challenging if you don't find people then who appear open, who appear willing, and
Yeah.
also just opportunities to do things that might allow you to crisscross with other people.
Sure.
And so I know that working with a lot of my clients, there is this deep, deep desire to like make real friendships.
Hmm.
But it's really hard to do that, especially as adults. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, Jason, but I have the conversation all the time with my clients about school raises us to have so many built-in ways to find hobbies, to practice interests, to connect with people. And then if you choose to go to college, you get to contribute to that even more so
Yeah.
on a level that's really of your choosing. And then you graduate, and then it's like poof. And while it's not that I didn't know that after college it was going to be, hey, you and all your friends are going to be blasted off to a bunch of different places and aren't going to regularly see each other anymore.
Mm.
And you're going to have to like make new friends, and wherever you end up, if you're lucky enough to do that. But like a lot of people are really struggling to make friends as adults and connect in that
It's
way
a really common issue. Yeah.
hugely. And it's
Yeah.
definitely, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's like part of, I will say, to be honest, there's a lot of me that I'm like, I don't know exactly how we fix that problem in this area of Northwest
Mhm.
Arkansas. But, you definitely, I think, being much more extroverted, you would say, and like you say, you are a joiner. Like, I'm curious what, outside of, like you said, you jumped into theater again,
Yeah.
what are some other ways that you think people, especially as adults, can find new friendships?
This is something I tell clients all the time. I actually had a longer conversation with one of my clients recently about this. It's about taking a risk,
Oh yeah.
which is tough, right? It goes back to the vulnerability thing.
Yep.
One of the stories that I tell is that I've had a friend now for I think we've been friends for 20 years now. But the short version of this is I knew he was moving into the building that I was moving into, and I decided to, like, it feels like weird to say it this way, like it's almost like I did something like really weird, but it's really not weird. It was done with the best of intentions. I baked a loaf of banana bread and I left it in front of the door to the apartment that I knew he was moving into with a note that said, "Hey, cool to meet you the other day. Glad you're moving into the building. Like, stop by for a beer if you want to hang out or whatever."
Yeah.
Well, that's my friend Will. And Will and I have now been really tight for the last 20 years. Like, it took me kind of pushing against my comfort zone, stepping outside of that, and being willing to risk rejection, right? Being willing to risk being seen as a weirdo who makes baked goods for total strangers.
Yeah.
But that was at the end of the day, like, that's what forged our connection, was my willingness to be vulnerable and to take that risk and be willing to be seen that way, right? It could have gone in a 180, right? And it could have just fallen flat and been nothing. But I got a good vibe and I thought he was a cool guy. And I was like, I think we would probably have fun hanging out. So
Yeah.
I took a risk and it paid off. It was really fantastic. So
Yeah.
it takes intentional effort, right? It takes that risk, it takes that vulnerability, like making friends as adults. If that is really what you're looking for, step outside your comfort zone, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. You got to
Right.
do something different to get that different result. So if you don't have enough connection, you don't have enough community, go find it. Pull yourself out of your comfort zone and seek it out and do stuff that maybe you just don't do on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I think too, what's really important to the flip side of, so your situation ended up working for the best. You guys have
Mhm.
been friends for over 20 years, is there will also be lots of times when you choose to connect with somebody and it doesn't work out,
Mm,
like maybe, you hang out for a little bit and then you
mm,
just drift away, or maybe you hang out a few times and you're like, this is not my kind of people.
mm.
And that doesn't mean that it's a risk not worth taking. I think that that's really important to know, that sometimes you're gonna have to like feel out people
Yeah.
until you find your people.
Yeah.
And that's always a hard lesson. I mean, believe me, I've been here again, 15, 16 years. And I've definitely, a lot of my friendships, especially, have been through work, which, I think is, for a lot of people, that's the most natural way that you can make friends if you're lucky enough to connect with people
You're around them
in
every
the place
day,
they
right? You
work.
spend a lot of time next to them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You have a shared thing in common, the working
Right.
experience. And then
Right.
hopefully you find other things in common from there that actually
Mhm.
make, other connections form.
Yeah.
But sometimes, yeah, you do get to know people more and you realize it's not for the best. But if you can take that information, that data from that experience, and help you remember, like, okay, I now know what not to go for. I know
Sure.
if I get, vibes,
Yeah.
so to speak, about
Yeah.
something, then I can pivot and do something different.
Right.
But yeah, so I think like that's super important for people, is to know, with risk comes discomfort. And
Mm.
sometimes the discomfort does win, but it doesn't mean it's not fruitful eventually.
Yeah. There's another layer to this too, and I thought this might be a good way to introduce our surprise topic of the
Yeah.
week. This is an element that I think we want to do each time that we do a podcast. Is one of us is going to be responsible for the surprise topic, and we're just going to sort of like bring it out for the other person, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
prepared around this, but it's related to connection, obviously. So,
Yeah.
Sean, I thought it would be fun to
Jason.
talk about um, the effort that you and I have put in to our friendship.
Oh my gosh.
It hasn't been linear, right? And it hasn't
Absolutely
been
not.
all sunshine and rainbows. And
No.
it took you at the beginning of our relationship sitting down in a really vulnerable way and asking to be friends. But then it also took several iterations of us like going through the shit with each other, right? And feeling disconnected and having to repair our relationship to really, I don't know, be able to appreciate what we have now.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
I say, how dare you?
How dare you
No,
ask
I
me
mean,
to be
yeah.
vulnerable and talk about connection on our connection podcast?
This is only supposed to be a do as I say, not as I do podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, just kidding. Just kidding. No, we also play in the mud too. Absolutely. It has been one of our connection has been one of the things that in recent years I have worked the hardest on, but that has also yielded some of the most powerful and rewarding um gifts. And to I think through knowing you, I've gone to know myself better. I definitely feel like going back to what I've said before, I definitely feel like I'd like to think in our best selves we enhance each other. I
I
definitely know
agree.
there are things that like I have definitely am like, oh yeah, I'm definitely handling this better because of something that either I see in Jason or something that we've worked out in our own dynamic. And but then also like you said, you go through the hard times, but if you really care, you keep going. But I'm also curious then, do you get to like answer to that same question right back at you in terms of
I mean, we're making up the rules as we go along. But something I wanted to comment on was like I've been privy to in I mean, really the best way, the amount of work, the type of work that you've done on yourself and how you've grown. It's been incredible to watch. Like it makes me emotional talking about it. The person that you were 4 years ago when I met you and the person that you are now is it's like it's such it's I'm not going to say night and day, but like the evolution that I've been witness to has been just beautiful. It's been beautiful to to be witness to be part of, to be next to, and to be involved in as your friend. It's been really, really rewarding. And so that to me that's the point, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for, is that rewarding connection. And I feel like we have that.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I will say, I definitely feel like when I came to y'all, it was, we were, a little year plus into the pandemic. And I definitely had needed a change. And I don't think I realized how much I had buried myself over the
That was
years.
all of us. Oh,
Right.
you're saying even before that, but I mean,
Even
pandemic
before that, but like,
changed all of
yeah,
us. Yeah.
absolutely. And so, like, in a lot of ways, like what you're talking about in terms of the change, of course, this is just how I view myself. So for whatever that's worth, it's been more of like not only a rebirth, but a return to self.
Mm,
I
yeah, I like
definitely
that.
feel closer to who I thought I was at
Yeah.
one point in time that maybe got lost along the way. But then also flipping it to you
Uh,
is, I think that I wanted to see Jason let loose and be weirder because I can't help myself. I really just like to, I'm kind of loud, I'm weird, and I like to celebrate in other people's weirdness. And so there were times where I couldn't sense where Jason's line of weirdness was.
mm,
But now I feel like I see you lean into being silly. Like, I think there's such a beauty in allowing ourselves to be silly
mm.
that maybe I didn't see you before. And so, like, I'm just grateful to witness either getting to see that from you, or if that's something that you've been building on in yourself or whatever. It's a cool part of connecting, is seeing like, oh, I didn't notice that shade existed in that person. How cool.
Yeah. I mean, some of that has been the evolution in our relationship, but also a lot of it is just my own personal journey, my personal growth too, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad that you can see it now and that you're enjoying it a little bit.
Absolutely. That's, yes,
Yeah.
it's like the best part.
Yeah.
Okay, not the best part, but one of the best parts.
A great part. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Because with
Yeah.
that usually is joy,
Yeah.
and joy is, we definitely need more of that.
Well, speaking of that,
Yeah.
how about we do some shout outs for the week?
Yes, yes. So, shout outs is something that I used to do with my former team back at my last place of work. And then when I was welcomed to the collective, it was definitely something I really wanted to continue, and we
Mm.
have
Yeah.
since, and I'm really excited about that. It's kind of a tradition of all of our meetings, is that we talk about our shout outs, things
Yeah.
that we feel really excited about, pumped about, just something that really makes your week, your day just better. And so I want you to go first. What's your shout out?
Okay. I have two right now. One of them is client work. Like, I feel like my clients have been doing really good work lately. But something that maybe everybody doesn't know about therapists, a lot of times a client's work can be a mirror for ourselves, right? It can
Oh
be like a catalyst for our own self exploration and our own kind of personal growth, right? I had a session a couple of weeks ago where a client mentioned something. It was an idea about something, a myth, and I did a dive into it, and it like unlocked something for me, and I
yeah.
just really kind of cracked wide open and explored this whole other part of myself, and I feel like almost fundamentally different 2 weeks later, which is
Wow.
so weird to say that, but I mean, that's happened in smaller ways dozens of times over the last, how long have I been doing this? 12 years now. It just is, right? Like, the relationships that we have with our clients, we can't help but see ourselves in them, right?
Right.
So it really does help. So that's one. So that's one of my is client work, and how that can be that catalyst for self work. And then my other one is, my shout out is for you taking the risk and asking me to be a part of this, and um, getting out of your own way, maybe, to
Definitely.
take this risk and to do this. Like, this is really cool, right? And even if it's just you and me and our mothers who listen to this, like, it doesn't really matter. We're at
Hi,
least
Linda.
having we're having some good discourse, right,
Yeah.
about topics that are important to us. So, high five, dude.
Yeah.
Nice
Oh,
job.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you again for joining me in that. That's so
Yeah.
nice. Yes, good vibes, man. I love good vibes.
Yeah.
So thank you. Love your shout outs. So this is also what you should expect from this podcast is we're going to go from deep to very superficial and ridiculous all the time. Probably mostly from my mouth because that's kind of the space I exist in. My shout outs, and this will probably be a shout out that is given in various iterations throughout the existence of not only this podcast, but just life, is television.
What? Sean, you watch TV?
I might frequently say television is my best friend, which, also I get that from Liz Lemon. Shout out Tina Fey. One day, if you hear this, please come on the podcast, meet me, also become best friends, and take me under your wing. I love you. Anyway, sorry, not to make this about me more than it is. But the shout out, there is so much amazing TV, specifically this past weekend. Okay, so we just wrapped up White Lotus season 3, which
right?
Just incredible. Mike White.
Yeah.
Hacks just returned for its 4th season, and it is. I just cannot get over the performances, the writing. It is one of the funniest shows I've ever watched, and what they do with character dynamics and understanding things. I mean, that's where, especially if you love anything about understanding people, great television makes you do that. It makes you look at characters and their motives and their connections and teaches us about, I don't know, at least that's what I try to get from it.
Sure.
And also the Last of Us is coming out tonight.
Yeah, tonight.
And I mean, and that's also, I also, again, my Bravo shows, I'm a big Bravo fan. It's definitely one of the gayest parts about me. And right now Summer House is
it's
killing
your
it, if anybody
OGT.
Knows.
Do you know that reference? OGT?
Maybe not.
You're obviously gay trait.
I mean, I unfortunately have many, but this is definitely one of them. So yeah, any Bravo fans who are listening, just know, like, I'm always here for that, even though you're, whatever. So, anyway, there's just so much good television right now, and I just appreciate creatives. And there's so many different ways to access it. So, I'm just grateful, especially right now. We need to find ways to not only plug in, but also to unplug.
Yeah.
And to me, television is a service of being able to do that. So my shout is to excellent television.
Great. I like it.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Well, we just did our very first episode, Jason. How do you think we did? How would you grade our work today?
I mean, a solid B plus. I think we talked about some important stuff. I think we went off the rails a little bit, but I also think that's going to be part of the process. No, I think this was. I mean, I had a good time. I feel like there's potential for lots and lots of other topics and subjects and things that we can dig into and have fun talking about. And it was great. Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I would say definitely a good B plus. I'm trying to be, thoughtful and kind in this, and not let the perfectionism win. So anyway, it's exciting. It's very cool to do this, and hopefully we get to do many, many more of these to come. And hopefully those of you who are listening right now will come back and will keep listening and also watching. And hopefully you got something from this conversation.
Yeah, that's the important part. Yeah.
That is the important part. If you get a chance, please share this podcast with anyone that you think might benefit from it. Hit subscribe anywhere you can, on any place that you get podcasts. We're there. This is our time to sign off.
Yeah. So just remember to take a deep breath
and collect your thoughts. Bye, y'all. Have a great
Bye, guys.
day.